Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's just another demo on how to do the nose. Obviously, I've already done one the other day. You can see the one that I made over here. You want to take a look. I think the biggest thing that I want to make sure that you guys understood is that all these features, just like on a real face, they need to be rounded. Okay, so don't let any of the pinching that you do end up making something that really has like a right angle to it or becomes really thin. Up by the nostrils, up by the bridge of the nose. We still want to maintain that roundness. And as you're working, one of the things I can always recommend is look at your own face. Look at it in the mirror. Look for how your own nose contours. And again, the shape of the nose, the thickness of the nose, the width. All of that stuff, you know, it can change rapidly because honestly, everybody's face is very different. Eyes are, you know, not as distinctly different. Mouths are not as distinctly different. But the nose, you know, we can have everything from a big tiny bump to a little sort of button nose. And obviously at different stages of development in your life, you'll have, your nose is the only thing that keeps growing and growing and growing even when you seemingly stop to grow. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make my base again. I wanted to create something that I could attach my clay to. And, you know, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to worry about the thickness so much. It could be relatively thin, but just as usual, and always because it's good practice, we would like to make sure that that's even. And again, we want to make sort of a long, thin, rectangular kind of base. This way we have plenty of space to sort of attach our nose to. So again, you can see the thickness here. You can see it's relatively equal thickness all the way through. If you feel like you have lumps and stuff like that, just flatten that out and place it down. That's going to be what I start with. And don't worry, this is one part that we're not going to worry about too much if it's too thin. It's just something that we have so that we can sort of attach our nose to. And when we work on the full face, we're going to make a face first without a nose. The nose is going to be the last thing we add. And just like the way we practiced that we did the eye first, and then we did the mouth, and then we did the nose, when we make our full face, we're actually going to work the same way. We're going to work with our eyes first, and mouth, and then add our nose afterwards. If you pre-made your little clay balls, we want to make sure that they're, again, still about the size of a quarter. What we're going to do for the nose is we're going to take two of them and we're going to mush those two together. So we want to make sure that we are using a little bit more clay than we're used to. I've used this sort of quarter size to kind of keep things sort of, I guess, uniform for everybody, so you have enough clay to do everything that we need to do. As we learn and get better at sculpting, you should be able to go smaller and smaller. Really, we're working without tools, so again, you know, we can't go teeny tiny, but we could certainly, I guess it's easier to make things bigger, especially when you're learning. We're going to mesh those two together. I'm going to mesh these two together. I made my little sort of larger ball. Again, you want to make sure there's no like creases, no little sort of folds or anything else like that. Roll it up in my finger. And to start off, we want to kind of start off with a little bit more of an egg shape. Not so much the perfect circle, but a little bit more of the egg shape. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start, just like we did with the original eyeball, is I'm going to start sort of flattening out one side. So I'm pushing it up against my surface over here, and I'm just trying to elongate, make this whole piece a little bit longer looking. Now, don't pinch too much. Like, we don't want to make a ridge or an edge at the end of the nose. Feel your own nose. It really isn't that sharp at the top of it. But what I'm doing is I'm sort of like elongating this thing, making it a little bit longer and flatter on one side. That way it'll sort of stick to and adhere to my base. Now what we want to do is you want to kind of start pinching. And one of the ways that I'm going to do this, and you could literally have your fingers the same way as I have them, is we want to kind of use the long parts of our index fingers And this is what we're going to kind of pinch the bridge of the nose. So we're slowly sort of extending out the top of this. I'm taking my thumbs and I'm pinching my thumbs into the bottom. So what we're trying to do is take that egg-like shape that we made and make it a little bit more triangular. Now, as I'm pressing and pinching like this, I want to make sure that I don't make the tip of the nose into like just a point. We want this to be a nice, round looking like hill and not a jagged sort of mountain. So as you can see, I'm still pressing in with my, yes, still pressing in with my thumbs, pushing it with my index fingers, and trying to make this thing a little bit more triangular. But when I pick it up and look at it, you can see the bridge over here is still relatively round. These edges over here are still round. It's not getting like sharp or jagged. Now, mattering on how much clay you have, it's going to matter how big you make the nose. And if you want to make the nose a little bit wider, well, just kind of pinch down the front of it and extend the sides out. But the most important part, and the one thing I saw in class from a couple people who are working on the nose, is don't pinch this too thin. Take a look at what the bridge looks like over here. See how round mine is. If I were to pinch it out like this, see, that doesn't really look like a real nose. That looks a little bit too extreme. So if you should do that and you do pinch it out too much, just sort of make sure that you sort of press it in around it. Well, I'm going to make this one a little bit of a flatter nose, and again, index fingers towards the top, thumbs at the bottom over here. You can arch your nostrils just a little bit. Again, a little bit of a different pinch will make it look like a little bit different of a nose. You can see what I have so far. Again, I'm trying to make it as symmetrical as I can. We'll look at it from different angles. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that right here, this back end of the nostril stays pretty round. I'm going to get in there with my finger, and I'm just going to kind of lightly just pat it and kind of keep a sort of roundness this back edge. On the other side, you see where it's sort of getting a little bit flat? Right in here, okay? We want to kind of make sure that's the nostril, and if you look at your own face, that's a pretty round part of your face. We just want to kind of make sure that edge stays a little bit rounder. You can see this middle part is sort of protruding a little bit. That's where like the septum, that middle part of the nose is. Okay? I'm going to kind of leave that sticking out just a little bit. Look at the bridge. We can adjust it how we like. We can look at the profile, and we could kind of slope it more or round it off more or make it flatter or a little more pinched. Again, everybody's nose is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to make mine a little more contoured on this particular one than I did on the last one. And what you want to make sure is that very front part of the nose, just like on your own face, is nice and round. This back edge over here where the nostril is going to touch to your cheek, that stays pretty round, and you've done it on both sides. And what we could do is we could just do a tiny pinch right above those nostrils, just a little pinch above those nostrils. All right, once we have this set up, now we can kind of look to attach it to our base. Now, we're going to attach it and smooth it out in multiple places, but not everywhere. What we want to see on that side, again, is that we've got a nice bulge and like round area over here and here. We don't want to smush that out. We want to leave it like that. But we do need to connect this to our base. So where am I going to connect it? I'm going to connect it down here by the septum of the nose. I'm going to try to push and mush that into my base so I get it connected. I want to kind of be careful that I don't go too far out over here, but I do want to make this look like it's one piece. And again, one of the secrets to going in and making one piece is just keep dragging your finger through it. All right, so you see how I've mushed the two of those together, but you see what it looks like from underneath. All right, I didn't go all the way out to the edges. I still have that sort of round bulge, that crease that happens with the nose. Now I want to start getting the bridge of the nose blended in. Again, we don't want to do this part. We don't want to blend that part, but right above it is an area that we want to start blending in. And again, be patient. It doesn't happen with one swipe, but just keep dragging your finger over it. The more you do that, the less you're going to see the two of those seams where the clay was connected. I'm going to finish this one side, and then I'll show you the other. If you look at that, you look at right in here, it's all one piece. I've still maintained this little crease that I have in the back over here. I didn't completely wipe that out, okay? So I blended it in the bottom, I blended it on the side, but I've avoided it right there. I'm going to turn this over and work on the other side. Again, up by the bridge of the nose. This is going to have to sweep into your cheeks when we do make a full face. Again, just run your finger over it. You can see where that nose now has been pretty much welded onto or smooth and blended into that base that I created. But this little edge here still remains basically a little creased. All right. I can come back now. I can play around a little bit with the overall shape. You don't need the plastic surgery to come in here and change your nose. So if you want it thinner, if you want it thicker, if you want it flatter, if you want it rounder, now's the time to play with that. I'm just going to kind of get in and just give it a little bit more of a press in here. You can already see it's created that sort of sense of shadow. All right, right underneath there. I know we don't have necessarily the greatest tools. I've only given you a toothpick, but we could always use that toothpick to kind of just indent a little bit more into our nose. And I'm just going to grab another toothpick. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. And keep these holes relatively small. I'm going to kind of almost trace out a little bit more of a nostril in here. And then what I'm going to do is just try to get in there with a fingertip and just kind of just carefully indent that just a little bit more. It just creates a little bit more of a indentation over there. Okay. So when you look at it from the front over here, it gives you a little bit of shadow, like it looks like there is a nostril that goes up there. If you could get in there if you had to and pick your nose. And I'm going to kind of a little spot, really kind of get in there a little bit, the fingertip, pinky tip, and just try to press that in a little bit, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a giant hole. You shouldn't be digging into the nose like that, but just enough that you create what you see right now, that little effect of shadow. You can just see it from this angle that it's really not that deep, but it does create that effect of, you know, here's a nose and everything else like that. So that is really it. You know, it's not the longest one we've had to do. It's not the most complicated one that we have to do. But the important part that I want you to get is rounded forms, rounded edges, rounded tip and bridge. Don't let this become like a mountain range where it's all pinched up on the edges. When you blend this to your base, blend the bridge of the nose, the upper part of the nose, blend underneath over here, the septum. But these two curves over here on the outside of the nostrils, leave them be. That should be really like where the curvature of your nose kind of meets your cheeks. If you flatten that out, you're going to look a little bit like, I don't know, Voldemort or something like that. Anybody knows the reference. So that's my second nose. A little bit wider than the first one. A little bit more flared out. Again, you can make those adjustments as you're working. The noses are very different. You don't have to make them all match. And that's really our last practice over here. I'm not asking for two different noses. We don't need to do that, but we've gone through the eyes, nose, and mouth. We have all our pieces, and the goal is going to be to now break all this stuff down, mush it all back up, and start fresh and create ourselves a fully formed face. And those videos will start very shortly.